My name is Chris Gilbuddy. We want to thank you for coming out and joining us for Meal Prep on a Budget. I wanted to introduce my colleague who has been helping us with planning this event. Her name is Amy Estes, and she is the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. And she's going to introduce our special guest.
Perfect.
Thank you, Amy.
Welcome, everybody. We have a very special guest with us this evening. It's Joan Denton. Joan's, we've been fortunate. Joan's helped us a lot over the last couple of years with the medical school. She's a registered dietitian and nutritionist. She is actually a cordon bleu trained chef. She is the owner of Culinary Cures, and she's currently working on her PhD in nutritional sciences. She's a fantastic resource for us. So I'd love to turn it over for her. We're fortunate to have her, and she's going to walk through some fantastic dishes for us today. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for allowing me to come here today. I just wanted to give you a little background so you kind of know where I'm coming from. But I am one of 10 kids. My mom left when I'm number 8 of 10, and I was in 2nd grade. And so my dad was raising us. My dad worked at the Pentagon. We were up in DC. And for him to come home from work and try to get dinner on the table was quite a struggle. So he would call me when I got home from school, and he would tell me what he wanted for dinner. And I loved to cook. I wanted to be able to cook, but how much do you know when you're in 2nd grade? So anyhow, he talked me through that, and that's how I got my beginning, my exposure to cooking. My dad, what his job was with at the Pentagon, he would make sure that the troops' rations were healthy. So he'd come home and we were his troops, and he would make sure everything we ate was very healthy. And as you can imagine, we had to eat on a budget, and we always ate healthy. I get a little irritated or frustrated when I hear that, well, you can't eat healthy on a budget. You know, it's just too expensive to eat healthy, which is not true. So I brought 2 recipes today that I wanted to go over with you that offer shelf-stable items. I know you all are studying, and a lot of people doing internships and clinicals and running around, and you just can't always make it to the grocery store, and I don't want that to be a problem. I'm going to present some recipes that are shelf-stable, freezer, and so very easy to cook, very healthy, very versatile, but when you've come home at the end of a long day, you can feel good about making these recipes. But before we get started with I wanted to do a little nutrition education. So in my private practice, I meet with people and I teach them how to cook and eat according to their unique dietary needs. And I used to make the assumption that people understood exactly what a carbohydrate is and how does it work in the body, what is a protein, how does it work in the body, and the same thing for fat. And I have found that I have totally stopped doing that, and I really meet people where they are, and before I meet with them and do more nutrition education with them or consulting, we do this little nutrition education just to make sure we're all on the same page. And I know that if you all are here, a part of this school, I know you're very smart, but still, I'm going to go back and kind of skim over the macronutrients and how they work in our body. If we don't really understand that, we don't keep that in mind, it's very hard to have a strategy when you're building a meal. So building a meal is more than, what do you have a hankering for? So we're going to switch over and do a little PowerPoint. And also, I wanted to throw something out there. Is it okay to tell them about the little?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to offer a free 1-hour counseling session. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a number. And so any of you, if you want to participate, you can add your number. You can, on the little chat down there, you can add that. And I know that there are people who can't make this session, and it's going to be recorded so that we will give them an opportunity to be involved as well. Additionally, if you have any questions or whatever, you feel free to speak out, or you can write a question in on the chat part, and Amy is over there to answer your questions, okay? So again, there are no stupid questions. Feel free to interrupt anytime. I love that. Okay, so we're going to switch over to the PowerPoint. We're going to talk about the nutrition education, the macronutrients, and then we're going to talk about how to plan meals, and then we will switch over to our recipes. So the macronutrients, we know that those are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But what exactly is a carbohydrate? Why is it important? What function does it serve in our body? Too often when I bring that word up, people are like, oh, I don't do carbs. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, because we do need them. They are important. That is the energy providing nutrient in the form of sugar, starch, or dietary fiber. So I'm not talking about, well, energy providing. That is the body's number one go-to source for energy. Even when you sleep, your body needs that. So when I say sugar, I'm talking about glucose when it's all broken down. So fruits have sugar, vegetables have a little bit, some milk products have sugar. It's going to be in there, but it is different from added sugars. So kind of keep that in mind. But plant-based foods are the primary source of carbohydrates. But we have the two different forms. We have the simple or refined, also called refined, and that's kind of like the white sugar, cakes, cookies, candies, sodas, white bread, white pasta, like that. But we want to focus on the complex. And I don't like to say you should never have that, but I really want us to focus on the complex and understand how they benefit our bodies, so that when we do go to plan our meal, we're going to stop telling ourselves, I can't have that, I can't have, and I want us to adopt this theory of how can I nourish my body. So complex carbohydrates have a wonderful offering for us. So brown rice, potatoes, beans, legumes, corns, whole wheat bread, it's in our fruits and vegetables as well. So kind of keep that in mind about the carbohydrates. So how does that work in our body? The number one source, or the number one function of carbohydrates, is for energy. So if you are more sedentary, you're not getting up around that much. Now, let me back up a little bit. When we talk about our macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, each of them has a range of what percentage of our diet they should be. Carbohydrates is typically 45 to 65% of the total calories you take in a day. So if you are very active and you're running around, and really if you're studying a lot, you need to have more carbohydrates. Your body is going to be burning a lot more. If you are very sedentary and you mainly sit and you don't have a real active job, you can be on the lower end of that. But your brain works off of glucose, so you've got to keep that fueled. Carbohydrates contribute toward your energy reserve. So every time you eat a meal, your body will take a little bit of it and store it as glycogen in our liver and in our muscles. That's kind of like the savings it puts aside to protect your body. Right away, your body does start to burn that energy. So a little bit goes towards that, but it also, some does get stored. Promotes the elimination of waste. So when we take in a carbohydrate, we have both soluble and insoluble fiber. Both of them, fruits and vegetables, are going to have a mix, and they're important for two different functions. So the fiber that's in that soluble fiber is going to help you feel, and insoluble as well, feel fuller for longer. It kind of slows down that digestive time. So sometimes people are like, well, I ate a salad and I was starving like 30 minutes later. We're going to talk about why that happens and how to fix that. But that is going to, that insoluble fiber helps to bulk up our stool. The soluble fiber acts as it kind of gets gelatinous when it's in our body. So when we do have extra cholesterol floating around that needs to be rid, it takes those toxins and removes them from the body. It's a team effort right there. And it helps to keep us regular. Carbohydrates also supply raw materials to help build compounds. It affects the structure and function of proteins, and it helps to include communication among all the cells. Protein. All right, when we think of protein, we think of structure and function of the body. Protein helps to build, repair, maintain all cells and tissues throughout the body, and it supports the vital internal functions of the body. So growth and maintenance. There's going to be times in your life, really in the life cycle, where we need more protein. A young child, an expectant mother, somebody maybe who had surgery or who had a burn, where the body really needs healing and repair. It helps with fluid balance, acid-base balance, transporting substances throughout the body, helps with blood clotting, hormone production, enzyme production, antibody production. And your body doesn't want to use protein as a source of energy, but if you go for a long period without eating and it's hungry, it's going to look for some kind of fuel. So it will break down muscle, and we don't want that. We want to keep the protein, and we use protein for energy. We want to keep the protein for structure and function of the body. Okay, fats and lipids, or also called lipids. Very important, and I know this is a big topic. We do need it to be a part of our diet. And there's still more research coming out about like how much of our, what percentage that should be of our diet. We're looking at about 30%. Really, we don't want it to be more than 30%, and it's a guide. But it is a part of a healthy diet. It helps maintain fullness. It gives us a feeling of fullness and satiety after we eat. It's just the type of fat. So we want unsaturated fats, and that's mono and polyunsaturated fats that are liquid at room temperature, and they're typically found in plant-based foods. I know a big trend right now is with the coconut oil, and moderation is perfectly fine, but as massive amounts added in, I did it as part of a little experiment. I was challenged by a professor in graduate school to do the ketogenic diet, and it made me very sick. And my cholesterol went up 22 points in 6 weeks. And yeah, it wasn't a great thing. So moderation is great. Kind of mix it up. You kind of get bored. I'm all for that. But again, keep the moderation. We just want to avoid trans fat, or definitely avoid trans fats, keep saturated fats at a minimum, which I think is like 3% of the diet. Okay, so we know that fats provide energy, insulation and organ protection, hormone production, cellular structure, nutrient absorption. For example, we have our fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. So let's say you had bell peppers for a snack. That, and you all have seen when you try to mix oil and water, it kind of separates. So when we take in a fat-soluble vitamin, for example, the vitamin A, it needs a carrier. It needs something to help your body absorb it. So when you have a meal, and typically people would have bell peppers like with a salad or a stir fry, something like that, it's okay to put a little bit of that dressing on there. It needs some kind of fat to help your body absorb it. And we also know that fat supports vital internal organs. Okay, so now we're getting to menu planning. People are like, well, where do I start? You hear all this information about intermittent fasting and this is good, that's bad, never do this. Really, listen to your body. If you're one of the people that really enjoy breakfast, which I do, it's good to have a breakfast. Really, your metabolism is higher in the morning than the rest of the day. So if you're going to eat a larger meal, that is probably a good time, but we're looking about 250 to 300 calories. And again, this is a guide. Everybody's different. Everyone has a different schedule. Lunch and dinner, about 500, 600 calories per meal. And then snacks, about 200 to 250. And, one of my kids, his stomach is he just gets kind of queasy in the morning. So breakfast isn't a meal for him, and that's perfectly fine. But just kind of keep that in mind. It's different for everybody. Fiber. As a nation, I believe only 9% of us get the amount of fiber that we need in a day. So I shoot for 10 grams per meal. And what I tell my clients is just go for color. And I say try to aim for 3 colors at every meal. And when we do that, we typically get the amount of fiber that we need without kind of getting stressed over it. But again, it's not, I can't have this, I can't have that. It's like, I really need fiber. I need color. Go for the color, and then you get the fiber, and you get all those phytonutrients with that. And fiber, the dietary intake, the RDAs, it's a guide. It's a guide on how to plan your meals. And really, it is for, especially when people talk about protein, they struggle over how much is enough. and you get all kinds of stuff. The guidelines are to avoid a deficiency. And it's not like you can't get more than that. But all of these are to avoid a deficiency. And when we talk about fiber, they base it off of 1,000 calories, 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories. And so that's where we kind of get, you'll hear the 25 for women, 35 grams for men. That's where that comes from. But again, I think that's the minimum. We really do need to get more. Research shows that when we get the amount of fiber we need, it can reduce chronic disease up to 25%. Okay, so we did talk about protein. There are equations that people can use for their weight, exactly what they would need. Some people, that's important to them and they need it and they want to know exactly what they need. But one thing we need to keep in mind is that nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all. These numbers, these equations are a guide. And for the guidelines, you would, and I guess the numbers they come at, you would take your weight and you would divide it by 2.2 to get kilograms, and then you would multiply that by 0.8, and that will give you how many grams of protein you need in a day. And again, this is a guide, and that's to avoid a deficiency. For people who are very active, or maybe people who are expecting, or who are fighting maybe a disease, a sickness, illness, something along those lines, their needs are going to be greater. So again, it's a guide, but keep that in mind. Sodium, the majority of us take in way too much. Adequate intake is about 1,500 milligrams. The upper limit is 2,400 milligrams, and that's almost, just for comparison, it's almost the same amount as a Chick-fil-A sandwich. So I know people are like, no, don't say that. Well, it just kind of puts things into perspective. It doesn't mean you can't have that sandwich. What it does mean is that you need to watch your intake for the rest of the day. And about 80% of the sodium we take in is through the processed packaged foods or eating out. And as Amy told you, I did go through culinary school. My chefs were, they had their own restaurants. And there's one in particular, I like to tell the story to kind of give people a perspective, but she was the head chef at the mansion on Turtle Creek. And so she was presenting a dish, and what we did as students, we would observe, take our notes, and we'd go back to our table, get our ingredients, and we would do the same thing. So we would make it, and we would bring it to her, and she would taste it and give us her feedback, what we did wrong or whatever. So I was a dietitian at the time going through this, and really the way I was raised, my dad never salted our food. We didn't know the difference. So I knew she would expect it, so I put a little bit on there, and personally, I didn't think it needed it, but I knew that's what she wanted. So I took it up there and she said, "Did you season this at all?" And I said, "Yes, I did." "Go back and do it again." So I went back to my table, I put on more, and I thought, well, this is gross. But I took it back to her and she tested it again. And she said, "Did you season this at all?" And I said, "Yes, I did." So I went back, and then I'm like, okay. And I just put a ton of it on there, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I brought it back to her and she said, "Finally, you got it right." I tell you that so that you know when you go to these restaurants that there's a lot of sodium that is in there. You don't see it, and it all tastes great, but it's just something to be aware of. So especially, I mean, if you eat out often, that's why we're kind of showing you this demo, things you can make at home where you have control over your food. When I cook at home, I do season. I am active, and I'm out and about, and I am sweating a lot. So salt is not the enemy, it's how much we're getting. But I know when I cook for myself that I have control over that. Okay, so I was telling you earlier about when I hear people say, "I had a salad and I was so hungry." Every meal you should have some source of a healthy fat, and about a tablespoon. That fat is what brings on that satiety. It helps you feel fuller for longer. And it also works with the fiber as well. But having that combination, the three colors, the protein, and it's about 20 grams per meal, and then that healthy fat for every meal, then you will feel satisfied, and you won't have the spike in the blood sugar and then a drop, and then you'll avoid reaching for something packaged that you later on would regret. Okay, so the meal prep plan. Now, growing up, my dad put it in his head. So I would go with him to the commissary and he would send me off in one direction and he would go in another. Now, I would get like milk and things like that, but I had a huge cart and for 10 kids, the whole thing was filled with milk and then with bread. I mean, we had like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 loaves of bread at least. But the important part is you need to really sit down and write out what you want to eat for the week. Pick a convenient time where you're not rushed, that you can kind of write down items that you like. And again, it's not going to be the same for everybody. And I really encourage people to rotate your proteins and try, if you don't already, try to do one day of the week where it's only plant-based. I do 2 days of the week that are plant-based, but I've tried so many different recipes that it's really not a big deal. Now, and my husband would be very resistant if I came to him and said, hey, let's go vegan or vegetarian on Tuesday and Thursday. He would say, no, I don't like that. But when he comes home, the meal is ready. I made it for him. And he was like, well, what is this? And I said, well, take some bites and then tell me. And he's like, I love it. This is great. And it was a tofu. It was a stir-fried tofu. And I said, and also you have eaten only plant-based foods all day. And he's like, that wasn't bad at all. It was good. I liked everything. So I think it's just experimenting. So big thing to do is sit down to find a time to write out your meals. Rotate, try to do 2 days fish, at least one day all plant-based. Maybe have some chicken and pork, a lean pork and some beef, but kind of mix it up a little bit. And also, I'll get to that later, but cooking once and eating twice or thrice. So we'll kind of keep that in mind. But plan around food items that you already have on hand, maybe family favorites. Like a stir-fry recipe I have, I can substitute in a tofu instead of the chicken, or if you had some leftover pork from the night before, you can slice that up and put it in there. I will pull out stuff from the freezer or something from the pantry, things you can kind of mix up. And consider what's in season. For one, it is healthier for you. For two, it's going to be more affordable. And the other thing is, I went to Central Market not too long ago, and apples are coming in season, but I was seeing these apples from far off countries when we have them in abundance in the United States. So think about that while you're shopping. And my thing is, when it's picked and put in a box, in a warehouse, on a truck, on a ship, or a train, how long has it been since it's been picked and then it's finally gotten to your table? We really want to think about that when we shop. Get it as close to home as possible and in season. Check your grocer's circulars for sales. You can get really good deals that way. When you create your meals, then you create a shopping list and you stick to it. And do not shop when you're hungry. Make sure you eat first. So while you're writing out your menu, snack or whatever, and then write out your shopping list and then go there. Don't ever go hungry. Not a good idea. And consider plant-focused meals, like the Mediterranean Mind Influence. And there's a really good resource. It's called culinarymedicine.org. They have a ton of different recipes on there. You can do appetizers, breakfast, lunch, dinner. That has desserts on there. And this whole website is focused for people who maybe they're like 5 ingredients or less. So maybe if you're not a chef or you don't have time to cook, all these recipes are very friendly. And also all these ingredients you can get at Walmart. So it's not something that you have to make a trip to somewhere like Central Market. So very user friendly. Okay. And they can see okay, so here are just some meal planning worksheets. I mean, I know you all are smart. You can go online and find one that would work for you. But just this is what I was talking about, planning your worksheets out and making sure that in there you kind of pencil in how you're going to get your different colors in there. So just some different ideas. Another thing to consider is when I write out my grocery list, I think about how my grocery store is set up. So I know when I walk in, I'm going to walk into the produce department. So that's what I'm going to list first, everything that I'm going to need from produce. And then it swings around and I come into the meat department. I'm going to have things in there. And then I kind of go from there. But kind of keep that in mind when you make your list so you're not backtracking and forgetting things. Okay, so meal prep plan, stock pantry staples. I did this little experiment with one of my clients. She is a ballerina, and she felt like she didn't have time to cook. So she would leave her house, go over to Starbucks, park, run in, grab what she wanted, get back in her car, eat her breakfast, and then go on to her rehearsal. And so what I did is, it was a plant-based meal, and it was shelf-stable. And so we set a timer, and we cooked her whole meal. By the time she got in her car, went over there, parked, got her meal, got back in her car, we made her meal. She had control over what went into it. She could modify it a little bit. She had leftovers for the next day or a snack later on. And actually, she could have a few different meals. It was and not only that, it was a fraction of the cost. It was fresh, and she just took such pride in what she made. So again, it saves time, it saves money. I'm big about who's preparing the meal. How clean are they? How clean is the work area? With things going on today, I think all of us are a lot more careful. So it kind of gives you more control over that. So beans, dried or canned. As I go over the recipe, I'll show you what I used. But I know for some, using dried beans can be kind of intimidating, and it's really not a hard thing. Just putting them putting water over the beans in a pot, letting them soak overnight, rinsing out the water, bringing them up to a boil, and letting them cook from there. It's really very simple, but it's not a bad thing to buy canned beans, and I think 89 cents a can, and that can sometimes be a couple meals. So those are a good buy. Grains, especially if you can get them in bulk, there's just such a variety. It's hard to get bored with them. Fruits, dried or stored in their own juices. And I know a lot of people make smoothies. Getting them in that form, frozen, is also a good thing. For vegetables, to me, consider what the purpose is. So after you've made your meal, for example, broccoli. That's not really something that I like to buy frozen because I just, as a side dish, I think last night I had made a broccoli and Brussels sprout, I think. And to me, the frozen may be kind of, it gets kind of mushy. So depending on what you're using it for, if you're just going to put it in a soup, like at the end, the soup's pretty much ready, you just want to add another veggie, adding it in that way, I think is perfectly fine. With vegetables, you have a lot of playroom, and then spices and herbs. This is some of my favorite stuff because it's such an easy way to add more flavor, to give it a new dimension. And this is a way you kind of get away from salt, and using a variety of different spices. And I'll just show you real quick. This is what I get. Now, I'm not pushing Central Market. I know that there are a lot of different places that you can do this. With COVID, they've kind of shut some of it down, but for example, here is bay leaves. This package right here cost me 4 cents, if you can see right there. This, if you don't get them in the bulk aisle, you'll have to get like a jar, and it can be $5 or $6. And maybe you try out a spice and you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it, so I don't wanna buy a large container and then have it go bad. This bulk aisle is so affordable, and it's a nice way to experiment. Like with today's recipes, one of them, the enchilada casserole, calls for a chili powder. Central Market has about 6 or 7 different types of chili powders. It's fun to experiment with them. This bag was full. I've already used some of it, 99 cents. So, and again, you can play with them and have fun, and it just kind of puts a different little kick on your meal, if it's a taco soup or chili or like our casserole today, a nice way to kind of mix it up. And they add medicinal value. So I'll have to kind of go here. I have things written down. So like for bay leaves, It can add some vitamin C, vitamin A, folic acid, niacin. It kind of goes on and on, but the minerals, copper, potassium, calcium, manganese, iron, selenium, zinc, magnesium. So we're adding it for flavor, but we also are getting a lot of different benefits from that as well. Ginger is another one. It's a great source of vitamin C, magnesium. Let's see. It helps with inflammation. It has antioxidant compounds in there. I mean, there's just a lot of different benefits that it has. But for us, we're doing it for the flavor, and it really does add another layer of flavor and really boosts the meal. For your herbs, one thing I would like for you to do. Okay, so this is just like an Italian season. And here, 16 cents, and I've been using this. It was full. Just do some little experimenting when you do buy some of these. Put a little bit in like that, and the next one you take it out, rub it in your fingers, and it kind of releases the oil, and then you can just smell the aroma. So it adds a lot to your dish, but it's something you can play with, experiment with for 16 cents, and I think that's a great deal. Okay, freezer staples, fruits and vegetables. So they are picked, the fruits and vegetables are picked at the peak of ripeness, and then they're flash frozen. I was reading some research not too long ago that looked at a bag of broccoli that was in the freezer for a year versus a bag of broccoli that was in the fridge for 2 weeks. And of course, the bag of broccoli in the freezer was more nutritious than what was in the produce section. And then that is because the broccoli was picked at the peak of ripeness and it was flash frozen. So when you go and look in your frozen food section, and this is Walmart, Kroger, Albertsons, H-E-B, wherever you shop, just make sure that you look at the label for this recipe. I got this bird's eye, and I think really when I got there, all the other brands were picked over. This was the only corn I could find. But just look at the label and make sure that it's just corn and water. So, because a lot of them will have sauces, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the entrees or any of the fruits and vegetables that have sauces with it. So keep an eye on the label. But, and also when you guys are short for time and you're tired, the last thing you want to do is pull out a knife and start prepping onions or garlic. All these things can be pre-cut and ready to go. So you're really just kind of throwing them together, a huge time saver, and it is affordable. I mentioned earlier, cook once but eat twice or thrice. So today, one of the recipes that we're going to demo, actually both of them, there's different ways you can eat it, but it just kind of, after it mellows, it gets better the next day. So my husband and I have had it for dinner, and then like the next day, like a little appetizer, or put it on a bed of lettuce, served it that way. For grains, I will, at the beginning of the week, I will typically, this is the quinoa that we're going to use in a recipe. I will typically make like 2 or 3 different grains and put them in the fridge. I'll use some for that meal. Then I will add them in later, like in a tossed salad or in a soup, or making these, I have like a black bean quinoa burger. The nice thing, it's already made, it's in there, so you just find ways to add it in. And the same thing with animal proteins. Usually if I grill a chicken breast, I will grill like 6 of them. I'll have one part of it for that dinner. The next day, I'll make some into a chicken salad. And then the next day, I'll make them like a chicken enchilada. So you can use it in a lot of different ways. And the chicken enchilada dish can be frozen. You can have some for that meal and then freeze the rest. And then there are the beans, eggs, and tofu. So different sources of protein. I have some tofu and some tempeh in my refrigerator that's been there probably a couple weeks. It has a nice expiration date on it. I've got a good grace period, so it can be substituted in there. But it's easy and it's cheaper. It's so much less expensive than your animal proteins. Cooking at home, you have control over the ingredients. I told you the story about the sodium. That's a real big one. And it just cut costs significantly. And my kids say that I kind of ruin it for them if we're out at a restaurant. And we went to a really nice restaurant not too long ago, and they're like, "Mom, just don't say anything." I'm like, "I'm not, I'm fine." And then the meal comes out, and I'm like, "I could have made this do you know how much money we could have saved? And they get a little tired of it, but okay, I will chill and for everybody's sake, just to enjoy the meal. But again, you will see when you start tallying things up, you'll see how much money that you save when you cook at home. Okay, so we're going to shift over to our recipes. We're going to do a quinoa enchilada casserole using Pantry staples. It's fast and it's versatile. And then I'm going to do bliss bites, which is kind of like when you get a sweet tooth. Again, shelf-stable items that you can whip up real fast, and it's good, and it can hold in your fridge for a while too. Okay, so I was telling you earlier about the quinoa. And this is something, when I made the quinoa, you do need to rinse it before you use it. A lot of people say it can be bitter. They tried it once, they didn't like it, but that's probably why they didn't rinse it first. If you don't have a colander with real small holes, which is called a chinois, I have gotten it in a little pot, cover it with water, just kind of rinse it, dump out the water, and then cook it after that. Colors, it comes in red, it comes in like the white color. It's all fine. The nutrients may change a little bit, but one thing is for sure, we eat with our eyes first. So what we see, we want it to be attractive. And so this multicolor, to me, I think kind of looks prettier. So just kind of dump this in here. Anytime I make a rice and any type of grain, I always put in the bay leaves. And I'll put in like 3 or so. But when you experiment with it and after you finish cooking, take it out, kind of run it through your mouth, and you'll taste that aromatic flavor that it adds. Again, it's just a little subtle flavor, but it adds a lot of flavor to your dish. Okay, so the other thing we're going to put in is this, the red enchilada sauce. I've also seen it in green. You can get like one that's spicy or one that's a little more mild. It's fine, whatever suits you. That one, I think I saw it for like 79 cents. These are some green chilies. Do they have the recipe posted up there?
Yes.
Okay, so you all have that recipe. These, I've seen them on sale for like 43 cents, just different varieties. The corn, like I showed you the one that I picked up. This would not even be a quarter of that bag. I just kind of cut the top, take some out, frozen. You don't need to de-thaw it. Just put it in about a quarter cup. And then at home, I got my rubber bands. I put it around the corn, and I put it right back in there. Then we had the black beans. And be sure to rinse. You do want to rinse. That will, I think it cuts the sodium by about 30%. Plus it does have like a thick liquid in there. So it looks much better when you rinse it. And then the cilantro. I did make another one for us to use. If you don't have fresh, again, don't stress over it. You can get the dried. You just will use a little bit less, and then when you do put it in there, make sure you really smush it through your fingers to help release those oils.
What is dried coriander? I mean, is coriander
The seed.
cilantro?
Yeah, the seed. Okay, after cilantro, we have our cumin. I don't see that, but I have it right here. And if you like cumin, like I do, you're supposed to like really measure it out, but I've been doing this a lot, so. Okay, add the cumin in there, and then we have our chili powder. And again, you can play around with that. There's all kinds of different chili powders. And then you can salt and pepper. I think that was in there. Okay, and then, so really just kind of mixing this up, and I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Just a bowl, kind of mix it up. And then your cheeses. We're going to add about half. It's a mozzarella and a cheddar, but just add half. And you know, when I was at home making one, I had this in my fridge, and that's another thing you can play with. You don't have to use whatever cheese is here. This one, it had Monterey Jack, cheddar, Asiago, queso. This is what I like, so I just use that, and I think it's wonderful. Kind of mix that into it, and then the rest of it goes on top. Now, I already put one in the oven, so I want to show you another little trick. When you have a dish, you know, you do want to prep your dish and then preheat your oven before you start. Spray your dish down. But something else, when people typically get butter, they will take off the wrapper, put it in the dish, and then throw it away. Keep your wrapper, just fold it and stick it in the fridge, and then when you need to butter up a dish, you take your wrapper, open it up, and rub it there. So your hands aren't going to get dirty. Sometimes when I spray, it kind of goes over, or I don't happen to have spray on hand. It's just a good way, instead of throwing it away, you can use it and then throw it away. Okay, so that, you just put the cheese on top, stick it in the oven, 15, 20 minutes later, you're done. And this can be served with a little side salad. And we top it with, and again, this, you don't have to do it this way. Amy, would you like to sample it?
Sure.
You can do it with a little on top of a salad. Just put some out for you.
You've already pre-cut your avocados as well?
Yes, we've got the avocados and the tomatoes.
What's a nice serving of avocado? Do you prefer
About a quarter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're wanting that good fat per meal, it's about a quarter of avocado. And then you can put some tomatoes on there. And then you can serve that on top of it.
Oh, I like that.
And well, it may not be quite as pretty. It was actually done, and we've kind of left it in there. Another thing you can do for like a snack is what my boys like to do. These multi-grain Doritos, they will use it as like a dip.
Oh.
Yeah, with the scoops, they'll kind of scoop it up and dip it like for lunch or whatever. That's kind of quick, but it makes a great leftover, very easy. Okay, so that is our enchilada recipe. So we're going to go on to our dessert. This one's super fast, and it also can be switched up. So I have a food processor here. If you don't have a food processor, you can just kind of grind things. At home, I have you can use different cans, just kind of put it in a bag. Bag like this, you can put your walnuts in there, kind of grind them, and then put them together. For this recipe, half a cup of flax seeds, flax seeds are excellent source of fiber and protein. I mean, that's one of those ingredients that has a lot of benefits to it, and you can get it at Walmart. This one's already ground, so I don't need to grind it. And then our walnuts. These walnuts, this one came from Kroger, but you can get them from Walmart. And actually, they'll have different bags, one that says like broken pieces on it. And the whole ones are going to cost a little bit more. The broken pieces cost less. And what difference does it make? Because it's all going to be ground up. So go for the less expensive one, because there really is not a difference nutritionally. It's going to be a little loud. All right, then we're going to add in some dark chocolate. Again, you can get it at Walmart. When you eat, dark chocolate does have antioxidants in it. The thing about it, you want it to have at least 70% of the cacao. And it also has fiber. I didn't realize, it has manganese, but dark chocolate has a lot of benefits. And not only, health-wise, but emotionally, it feels good to have something sweet and to feel like you don't have to go without. So this one, you can pulse it as much as you want. If you want chunks in there. Don't pulse it as long. Then the coconut. Coconut you can get unsweetened. You can get the organic kind if you want. Just a personal preference. And then you can use either raisins or dates for your sweetener. And again, they have a lot of minerals, fiber. It's good for that sweetness. All right, so it's kind of getting a little crumbly, and we're going to add in a little bit of nut butter. You know, the stores now carry a lot of peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter. They're all good. It's a personal preference, but the thing is, check the label, because you don't want all those things in there. I've seen some that have sugar, a lot of sodium in there, and we do want to be careful about that. Let's see, where's my little fork I had here? This one's going to be about 2 to 4 tablespoons, and what you're really looking for is you're going to want to get you want it to be consistent, the consistency where you can make a ball out of it. Let's see. See, it's not quite firm enough. Okay, now you can see where this is kind of getting, see how you're able to make a ball out of it. You can use a scooper or just use your hands. And it's about 1.5 tablespoons. I have friends that do not like coconut. You can eat it like this, or just roll it in the coconut, which I have a little couple here. And they look like that. There's these little balls, and they are delicious.
Show one more time.
Show them? Okay. And I would say 2 is a serving size. Can you see it okay? Okay.
And I know you put walnuts in those, but I guess you could also do another nut, another ground nut
Yes.
as your dusting over the top.
For sure. The other day I was at someone's house and I was making them hummus. And they thought they had tahini. They did not, but they had pistachios. So I just made it out of pistachios and it was fine. Did you want to taste one?
Well, let's let Chris taste.
Oh.
No, you taste one. I know I'm going to like it.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. So, quick and easy. You're getting your plant-based proteins, you're getting fiber, you've got color in there. If you had some, I'm pointing to the enchilada casserole, if you had some chicken left over in the fridge, you can dice that up and throw it in there. It's very versatile. If you had mushrooms or whatever, you can throw things in. But again, it was fast, easy, healthy, and that will be a couple different meals for us. And this, when you got a sweet tooth and you're wanting something healthy as well as satisfying that sweet tooth, it's a good alternative. Everything we can get from Walmart.
I want to also ask you, you've got a bunch of nifty containers that you've prepped and brought in. Is that something, I've not seen those before. Where could I find
Oh, you can
those?
get them. You can get them online. You can get them on Amazon. All those. And you know, I know the thing was meal prep on a budget. And some people, when they hear that word meal prep, they think they have to line out 6 plates with all the dividers, and that's the only way you can meal prep. And people get so overwhelmed with that. It works for some, but I just don't want people to feel like that's the only way you meal prep, if you can make your 6 meals in one sitting. Not a lot of people can do that, especially students.
Well, I like the quinoa in that container because I feel like that I might go to that more frequently if it was made up for the week. And
Yeah.
I actually like that container better than I like some of my Tupperware. So,
And I will, I'll add that quinoa into like a tossed salad, just kind of throwing stuff in there and top it with some pepitas, great source of zinc, among other things. Yeah, and it's good to be able to see through it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, if my family can't see through it, then apparently it's not there. Do you all have any questions? Anything you'd like to add? See anything coming up? No? Okay. Well, I enjoyed doing the demo. I'm a big foodie, love to talk food, and again, we'll come up with a number, so if you all are interested in a free 1-hour session, just send them in your number, and I look forward to connecting with one of y'all. All right, thanks for coming, y'all. Bye-bye.